Oh, I need to turn that down. Okay. Hello.
Hey everyone.
Hey everyone. Thank you so much for joining in the live stream again for Friday night. It's 8 p.m. I'm back in the office. The setup is a little bit different. I want to make sure you can hear me. I think you can. I think I can just hear a bit of echo on the device I've got down here just now. So that's exciting. Thank you also so much for being a part of it again. I'm Matt Bailey, National Ambassador for the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, and I have with me for Friday night drinks in the office the Muzzman, Murray himself, the nerdiest whiskey book aficionado I could possibly ask to have on my channel. So I want to thank you so much for being a part of it.
Thank you very much, Matt.
And we'll talk a bit about you. We'll talk a bit about your history, how you got to be where you are now, and this even just like your passion for literature, your passion for whiskey, and have a bit of a chat. I will take your questions. I've sort of got a few. I've got a sort of a second device down here, so technologically we'll see how this works. Just let me know if you can't hear us at all because we're using a new microphone tonight. Okay, a big shout out. I just want to quickly say hello to your lovely Just Ramming joined, Jimmy Martin joined, Calte99 joined. Good to see you all joining in. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Always good to get some questions in. Sounds fun. Excellent. Good to hear to Calte. Thank you. So we're going to ask Murray. Tell me first of all your background in whiskey. Your background as an avid reader, an avid whiskey aficionado.
Well, as an avid whiskey aficionado first, I guess I joined the society some years ago. I don't even remember the year, but I can lay some credit / blame to my wife, then girlfriend, who bought me a gift membership to the society. I'd been interested in single malts and whiskey generally since I turned 18, and I basically tried to learn as much as I could and soak up whatever I could. At that time, as I have been for a while now, I was working in a bookshop, and so I started soaking up knowledge in there and talking to people. I'd go to bars and ask bartenders. I was that annoying guy who would ask the bartender all sorts of things and test them on their knowledge. So it's I've loved whiskey. I've been to various events.
We call them whiskey wankers, by the way.
Yeah.
That's the official term. That's the official term. But yeah.
But
I can say that I am one. It's okay.
And I am one too.
Self-proclaimed. It's okay. I'm not calling him out. Here we go.
But so I basically did a lot more research, and then eventually my wife said, "There's this thing called the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, and I bought you a gift membership." My then girlfriend and now wife, but. And that sort of snowballed from there. So I started going to every event I possibly could and asking or annoying Andrew Durbridge with questions. And
some things change, and some things never change. Yeah, some things never change. I mean, because Murray and I still annoy Andrew with questions when we get the opportunity, and he's hosting something, and we get to throw a few questions his way and see what he says. A few joins. Whiskey Taylor, thanks for joining. Whiskey Goucher, thanks for joining.
Hey, Alex.
Hey, Alex. El Kadri joined. Good day. James Fly joined. Whiskey Taylor joined. Dennis Zogena. You've got to find an easier Instagram name to say than that. Muzz Reads. Yeah. This is called Muzz Reads. It's a new section for us.
Muzz's book club. No,
it's his nighttime read. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in.
Thank you.
We'll take your questions, and we're going to have a bit of a chat. I'm actually, because Calte kind of asked, "What are we drinking?" I'm on sort of a beer at the moment, but we're about to pour a couple of drams, and because we've got something, we're going to have a bit of a chat about an upcoming cask. Have a chat about about the book as well. So tonight is a chance for Murray and I to have a chat about an upcoming book. This is the first time that the society has been actively involved in promoting a book and being part of something outside of... Because we sell whiskey, we sell rum, spirits, etc. We sell some glassware to members.
And the odd t-shirt.
And the odd t-shirt. Well, not this one. But this one. No. Not this one. 45 fins, she's so fine. Thank you for joining in. But what we also have is a new book coming, which is called The Founder's Tale, Pip Hill's. Some of you would have seen that one from my previous streams. a few weeks back, that one there, or even a few days ago. It's a new book coming from Pip Hills, and it's in the October Outturn. But Muzz has read it, I've read it, and so it's a chance for us tonight to talk about what's in the book, some of the interesting tales about it, some things that have surprised me, maybe for you as well, and enjoy a dram because it's Friday night. So we're going to have a quick dram of the 11.38 Tasty as Hell. What a name. We've got a bit of water on the table already, so I think we're all sorted here. And we'll have a bit of a taste of this one.
Wow, that's nice.
So it's a 12-year-old in our sweet, fruity and mellow profile. It's a first fill ex-red wine barrique. I'll pop that just in a shot there for you to see.
That's lovely.
So thank you everyone who's joining in. Sam joined. Good to see you, Sam. Hope everything's good down in Tassie. Hey, nice. Where do we buy it from? Whiskey Taylor. The book is in October Outturn. That whiskey will probably be in the Christmas Outturn. And the Rugby World Cup is one as well. Bricks was outstanding last night, says Gaucho. Really appreciate it, Alex. Thank you so much for coming.
Wish I could have made it.
He had other commitments. Cheers.
Cheers.
Slanger.
Ooh, that's lovely.
So let's talk Founder's Tale. Let's have a dram. Talk about Founder's Tale. Talk about what you found interesting about it. What you found fascinating. What was you start us off?
Well, Pip Hills, for anyone who hasn't heard, was the founder of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society in the sense that he was the one who kicked it off. As many may know, he was the one to go and obtain a cask directly from a distillery and bottle it for friends, and then it grew from there. So the first few chapters of this book cover those early stages of the ideas he got concerning the society, or the nascent society, the group of friends, a syndicate as it was, of things. And rightfully so, he's said that no one was doing this at that time. No one had thought to go and procure casks of whiskey and make them commercially available to people in that same single cask, unchill filtered, cask strength way. That simply wasn't done in the industry back then. So, it's those first few chapters of the book really do cover that early stage of the society, or the kernel or the acorn of it, if I tie it back to a whiskey metaphor, and acorns and oak. But, which is really sad, and I won't do that again.
You've gotten away with it once, not again.
Not again. That was a really bad wordplay, but
good evening, Whiskey Uncovered. Sorry, good to see you. Good to see you, Matt.
Yeah, great to see you, Matt.
Thank you so much, and thank you. Good to see you, Rowan. True North, always a pleasure.
Yes. As he's mentioned with the title of it, The Founder's Tale. It's not a straight up fact sheet in the sense that it's just bullet points or anything like that. It's the various aspects of everything that he's done in whiskey or related to whiskey. A tale implies that it's a little more winding and ambling, if you will. So he certainly has done that over the course of it, which I found very interesting and intriguing.
He's quite a storyteller.
A storyteller, yes.
He is quite a storyteller, and that's what I love about it. It's not just like a factual account of the society. In fact, the whole book isn't really about the society as even just on its own.
That's the interesting thing, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I was reading a book about the SMWS, I'd be a bit like, am I reading like sort of like a press sheet, almost a press release? I'm not reading a press release of this book. He's got so many amazing stories about the barley combine, and things which we won't spoil it all for you. No spoilers tonight.
Yeah, no spoilers, because it's worth.
This is the trailer. This is the trailer for the book.
The trailer where you don't get the spoilers, where they don't tell the whole thing.
Yeah, they don't tell the whole story. So, so you mean like a good trailer?
Yeah, a good trailer.
Like all the current trailers where you see the trailer, and you're like, no, I don't need to see the movie anymore.
Yeah.
That's great. No, but this is I'll do one thing which I'm going to really touch on nice and early, which about this book, which fascinated me, and I truly mean that. I always knew of Pip Hill's contribution to the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. I always thought, he's the founder of the society. He was responsible for single cask, single malts as we know them today from the society. And while the society has changed a lot over the years, some things have never changed. The bottles are like what we put in the bottle is still the same. It's still single cask, cask strength, non-chill filtered natural colour whiskey. as whiskey should be, as what he saw in it and what we see in it today. However, what I didn't realize, and this is truly fascinating, was his influence and the society's early influence on creating, on the popularization and marketing of single malts.
As a category of the whiskey world and how whiskey is treated, he was instrumental in that. That, like you, I found that very interesting. No one has really revealed that side of things, of where things were.
No, it's a kind of like the story about him with is it Andy Hall?
Andy McMillan or Andy Mack something.
Andy Mack, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd have to come back to it. I can't remember his surname, but Andy Hall / Mack. He was the guy who founded the classic malts range through Diageo.
Oh, yeah. The precursor to Diageo.
UDL.
Was UDL or UDV or whatever it was. United Distillers.
Yeah, well, then it was just United Distillers.
Yeah.
And then, for those who have, through their teenage years, had a few UDLs, you'll know where that name came from. But
yeah.
the thing is, though, it's like UD were created, Diageo then, I'm going to stay Diageo for the sake of argument.
For the sake of easy.
Diageo created the classic malt in 1988.
Yeah.
So 1988, the society was doing single malt, single cask whiskies, cask strength single malt whiskies in 83.
Yeah.
So and Pip Pip thought his ideas were, shall I say, encased in titanium and immune from criticism. But he thought that his ideas were where the value was. And these days, and that's not even that doesn't hold any weight. That doesn't hold it. But then he thought, well, Andy had stolen the idea for doing classic malts from Pip. And when he confronted him, Andy said, well, there's no IP, there's no copyright protection on a good idea. A good idea is a good idea.
Yeah.
And I think of that and I go, yeah, well, he's right.
He's
fine.
right.
Yeah, fine. So let's see who's joining in, sorry. Let's have a look. Pun, yeah, Muzz. Muzz, the Bill Collins of books. We'll take that.
I'll take that.
Gaucho says, Ambassador reads, Fraser DC92, good to see you, Fraser, hope you're well.
Oh, good to see Fraser, yeah.
And Harley John Seafood joined. I don't think we've seen you before, Harley John Seafood, but thank you for joining. I think that sounds like a cool business. Ezza, Erin, you're in. Welcome. Good to see you, Ezza. Ezza Finn, she's from Glenfarclas. She's from Vintage House. Sorry, Vintage House. But it's so good to see you, Ezza, and thank you for joining, as always. So yeah, this is some of the things where it's like, it's the story of the sort of single malts and how that's changed the industry.
It's very much about Pip Hill's involvement in various sides of where whiskey was going and how he helped shape aspects of the marketing of and the sale of single malt whiskey to the masses. It started obviously with Britain and the vaults, and he talks about the purchase of the vaults building in Leith and the adventures of Leith. Sort of flipping back to another question you'd asked me before about mentioned my love of literature and whiskey literature in particular. I've worked in books and book selling for many years and in various capacities, but whiskey books have struck a chord with me because, like old whiskies that you see, books that are published on a particular topic, in my case on whiskey, are a particular portal into that time and place in history, and they're able to give you a sense of what the whiskey industry was like at that time. If you look at old bottles of something, the old paper labels of society whiskey, or old bottlings that have been around that you might see on secondary markets or things, in Grandad's back shelf. Those are a time and place frozen in bottle, and a book on a particular topic on whiskey is a reflection of the industry as it was then. And I love looking at the different aspects of whiskey history through literature, through the books that exist that mention and talk about whiskey. There have been books going all the way back, but I find that a very interesting way of being able to explain the history of whiskey and where it sits in culture. In The Founder's Tale, he talks about Leith at the time he bought the vaults building, and the board of the society, and Leith was
£50,000.
£50,000.
£50,000. It's like buying it'd be equivalent of buying half of Barangaroo these days for $100,000.
Yeah, deal of the century sort of thing.
What a steal.
But Leith back in the 80s when he bought the building was not the easiest or nicest place to be in.
Leith was rough.
It was a rough place. It wasn't crime ridden. It wasn't the hellhole or anything, but it was a dockland area, and it was if for those in Sydney, it'd be equivalent to Barangaroo, Millers Point in the decades past, and when there were still active wharves there. In Melbourne, Docklands probably. I'm not sure of other cities' equivalents, but there are rough areas of any city, of any place, and Leith was not the most friendly place at the time.
If I can just jump in there, if for those who watch this in Melbourne, I would call Leith. This is a long shot, I know, but I would call Leith like 90s Fitzroy.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
90s Fitzroy. I mean, Fitzroy now is quite gentrified and quite sort of bohemian, and lots of nice restaurants and bars, and they've still got the commission flats in Fitzroy. Yeah. Just like a school with Banana Block in Leith. And it's like, and I think it's, and in Sydney, I'd call that, honestly, I actually held on Sydney, I'd call it 90s Redfern.
Yeah, 90s Redfern is probably a better equivalent. But he talks about Leith and the culture around Leith. And again, a common thread through all of the chapters of this is Pip talking about the people he's with. The common thread is the group of people. He goes to a distillery and buys a quarter cask of whiskey. In this case, it was Distillery 1, Glenfarclas. But he goes to share that with a bunch of friends. It's a gathering of friends. It's something that they keep pestering him about. So he forms a syndicate, a group of people. Again, a gathering of people, and then they decide to make it a bit more, professional and get it organised. Again, he's working with everyone else. He's gathering those people together, not wanting to hit too hard on those points, but
no, that's entirely right.
It's quite a common thread through this book, through all aspects of it,
which is quite sort of like quite telling. I mean, now because of this month being the gathering, and all the gathering that we're doing with members, and he does talk a bit about Leith and the sort of the tap and
the pubs there.
The
Port of Leith, which sounds like an awesome pub.
It's not.
Sounded like an awesome pub.
No, it did sound like an awesome pub. No, I like saying that because it's like there are still, if you walk outside of the vaults and sort of like U-turn back down towards the port, and down towards like Malmaison and like right
down that way. Yeah.
That whole stretch, like there's like 3 or 4 pubs along that strip still, and they're still like proper old school pubs. Yes, there's a Martin Wishart that's moved in. That's a 3 Michelin hat restaurant. Yeah, that's like you can get. I think it's like they charge £600 degustation menu kind of thing per person, and it's like and there's extremely deluxe apartments, which is where the old White Mackay Cooperage were across the road, and things like that. But in between that, there's still those old pubs, and if you walk past that pub at 9:30 in the morning, they're already pouring pints. They are already pouring pints for locals who are in that pub, I promise you. So there's still that mixture of sort of like, that is true. Like I've walked past to get my coffee to get to the 10 a.m. meeting, and there's this guy's already having a pint at the pub. It's like, oh, there we go.
It's Scotland.
It's Scotland. Hey, what happens in Scotland stays in Scotland, or something, or beers, But it's I mean, they're already hitting the lagers nice and early. But that's the thing, right? It's like Leith now has that sense of new and old school. Yeah. And I think that's actually encapsulated quite well in Pip's book because, actually, here's something. I'm going to change tact a bit here. I know I'm jumping around a bit. But there's one part of this book that I was reading, and it was right near the end. Again, no spoilers, but I mean, this is common knowledge by now. But how he's previously written books, which Murray's going to show us in a moment. He has previously written books, but he's also previously been asked to discuss why he left the society. And previously in articles online and old newspapers, it was published that he left the society because, it was time to move on. It's, sort of like, he doesn't know what else he can contribute to
Yeah.
the discussion. He says in this book, at the time he was pushed out.
Yeah.
And that's like I actually think it's encouragingly honest, and you sort of say, well, it's an honest take on why these things happened, the differences in opinion and where the society was going was what it's about.
And I think to make a bold admission that yes, it was, particularly given that we've read those articles and there were always assumptions made that perhaps there was friction there, and without delving too much into personality clashes and so on.
No.
It is him being able to explain. Yes, he was pushed out, and it was an unfortunate circumstance, and he obviously regrets it, but. Things have changed and the pendulum has swung again, and he's able to be involved in aspects of the society and be involved in various things. And I know that in a previous live stream Matt did a week or two ago, you had the vaults when they had the Lagonda there.
Yeah, the Lagonda, yeah. So that was actually really lovely. So the UK gathering events were just a little bit earlier this month than ours, and that's okay. But they were... they brought Pip along to the gathering in the UK, and they had his Lagonda sitting in the courtyard of the vaults. And I don't mean like a Lagonda. I don't mean like a 1937 Lagonda. I mean, they found Pip's actual Lagonda. And they found it had been through 3 owners since he sold it. And one of the previous owners, not the current one, had sprayed it a what Pip called a disgusting black colour. Which he wasn't too fond of. They've sort of given it a nice gloss black, but Pip's original Lagonda was, I think, a maroon.
Yeah,
almost a maroon color.
Yeah.
And so you found something interesting about Lagonda, didn't you?
Sad nerddom that I am.
No, I need to hear this. We need to hear this. Come on.
But I was curious about the Lagonda car. It's a vintage car.
Yeah.
His car, as he mentions in here, was heavily modified with a diesel engine, which none of the others were. It was experimental, but to find a Lagonda of that same vintage now in Australia would set you back around $450,000.
$450,000. I'm going to tell you right now, if I had $450,000 spare to spend on a car, I'd be buying a McLaren and a Corolla. I tell you what, I'd buy both. One would be my shopping car and one would be my weekend car. But
McLaren is the shopping car.
Yeah. with all of its 2 liters of luggage space.
Yeah.
But no, but you see, that's the thing is that they've shot up in value like a lot of vintage cars have, and it's a piece of society's history of him carting those casks back in that car, and I think that's a cool sort of. A cool moment in history with the with that car.
It is, and it features again through the book. He's woven aspects of where the car has been and what he did. He travelled all over Scotland with it, to Europe, to Czechoslovakia in it.
And just to give you an example of how he can weave storytelling, there's 2 chapters, part 1 and 2, called "The Lagonda and the Fall of Communism." He is quite a capitalist. And he's also quite a conservative, but he's got this sort of like it's old school take on his adventures with that Lagonda and the characters he met along the way.
Yeah,
and I think it's lovely. It's like
I think it's a genuinely interesting story. It's a great take on it, and in whiskey you do find a lot of fact files and other books, but he's written something here that is a narrative, and yes, you might wonder where it's going, but it's like any good Scots story, any story told by any good Scottish person, it will come back to the point. It's just going to take a scenic route there.
Yeah, that's the best way to describe it. It's the scenic route through the history of the society.
Yeah. That's the tagline that should be on the back.
One that no other person could ever tell,
yeah.
Honestly. That's why it's so good. It's such a yarn. It's so much fun. CXX 950, Jeremy Donay. Good to see you, Jeremy. I hope you're still tuned in. Hope you're well. Tommy KMC, Whiskey and Muzak, CXX 950, thank you for joining. Calte asks McLaren 720. That would be very close, yeah. I mean, you obviously are quite a car enthusiast yourself. I think a 720, McLaren 720, or maybe even the new Grand Tourer, I think might fit the bill. Lee Wallace, good to see you. Tuned in from the farm, I hope. So tell me what else in terms of like what was an unexpected turn for you? What was something that, because you and I know Pip's story,
Yeah.
but what was something in here where you go, oh wow, okay, I did not expect that. Was there something? Was there?
Well, in particular, and I just have to find it. I thought I had chapter markers, but I hadn't put them in there. I thought particularly the story of how he went to UD, United Distillers, and managed to get those extra casks. And obviously United Distillers back in the 80s and 90s, this is pre the Diageo takeover, which was 1997, and it was still quite the bureaucratic business. It was run by a Lord McFarlane, I think it is, or was. And it was there were some various bureaucratic obstacles. Obviously, United Distillers, the precursor to Diageo, had basically half the distillery industry. They had almost half of the distilleries in Scotland, and that meant half of those distilleries that the society wanted to be able to access the casks from. So they were told by various managers within UD that. The society was told, no, you're not getting anything. You guys are. We still treat you with suspicion. We're really not sure what your game is, and you're stealing our good casks for what? When we could do something with them. But how Pip and others in the society got around that by.
I felt like he just kept going up the chain.
Yeah, he just kept.
Until he sort of, someone's going to say yes eventually.
Someone will eventually say yes. I thought that was a really interesting turn, and apparently he met Lord McFarlane, basically the owner of UD at the time, or the main man, the god of UD. And
I mean, if your prefix is Lord,
if your prefix is Lord, you've got some pull. Had an appointment with him, sat down, had tea and scones, and said, here's what we're about, here's what we're trying to do, and
he said he's quite partial to scones.
Yeah. You learn all sorts of interesting things about the guy. I don't think he actually had a real job over the course of this either. He said he had a tax accountancy, then he had a boat, and he had another boat, and then he had the Lagonda, and he was racing something, and he had a farm and an interest in a croft, and it's like, do you do anything else?
Actually, a really good accompaniment to the book is actually our Whiskey Talk podcast, which is run by the UK.
Yeah.
There's a 1 hour and a 40-minute episode with interviewing Pip, and it's actually at a tasting in the vaults where they opened one of the bottles they know in existence of 1.1 and shared it around with members, and I think it would have been a remarkable experience.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Richard, the editor of the podcast, and he was saying. He's saying, there's close to about 4 hours of storytelling that we edited down to 1 hour and 40. And I said, why was that edited down? He goes, some of those stories are a bit, blue to make it all the way to the podcast. I said, yeah, that sounds like Pip's stories.
Yeah.
So he has got some amazing tales in here that you go through and you say, that can't possibly have happened. But who are we to judge?
Exactly.
We've also got another dram that we want to try. And this is almost like a bit of a chance for Murray to try something for the first time. R13.1. Now, I know this has been hotly anticipated by a lot of members, and it's coming in October Outturn. We only got 12 bottles in the country, now 11, because there's one in my office, and we shared this around at Bricks last night, and I want to be able to, a chance for Murray to be able to taste something that I know he hasn't tried before, and is a bit of sort of liquid history from this distillery, because this distillery no longer exists. It was demolished in 2002, as I talked about last night for our members, and was known for producing very much heavy naval-style rums for the British Navy in the war times.
They were on contract to the British Navy to produce this. They couldn't put their name to it, but it was British Navy or Royal Navy rum.
Slunter.
Oh, wow. That does not smell like any rum I've ever nosed before.
That is unlike most rums I've ever tried, yeah. So R13 is the code on that one, and it's the first ever R13, obviously, and probably one of only 2 casks I think we ever got.
Probably.
62.3% natural cask strength Caribbean rum, first fill barrel ex-bourbon, 20 years old. Let's see if that's some of the questions are coming in. Some people who are joining. Adam's Things joined. Good to see you. What would you recommend drinking whilst reading the book, SMWS wise? What dram would you pair with this book? That's a really good question, Alex. Thank you.
That's an awfully good question. In all honesty, I think, given it's 240 odd pages, depending on how long you take to read, it may be a few different drams. I'd start with something nice and. I would actually start probably with the flavour spectrum of the fruity and sweet end of things to begin with, and then probably head off into peat territory, or take the road to sherry land. He talks about having society whiskies, and one anecdote, without spoiling too much, the Lagonda, the car that he had, was notoriously unreliable, and he had to fix it several times. It had a diesel engine in it, so for those, and I'm not particularly mechanically inclined in that sense, but diesel engines will produce quite a lot of oil. He had some situation in the travels where he had to clean an area of the machinery of the oil that was there, so that he could do repairs to the metalwork. And he didn't have anything. They tried wiping it down, but there was still oil there. He pulled out a Society Ardbeg, poured it on with high alcohol volume, and poured it on the metal to clean it.
Only Pip.
But
I've actually got a Pip story that's not in the book.
Oh, excellent.
This is actually quite cool. So I was actually at a dinner with him back in May when he was at the Vaults.
Oh, right.
And I was sitting next to him at the Vaults for a staff dinner, and they wanted to introduce him to the international team, including myself and
that is cool,
and the China team and the Danish team and everyone, which was great. And are you having a moment?
It's all right. I can have a moment. Listen, I can't multitask.
No, you can multitask. And he was sitting next to me, and at the last course, the dessert was presented with a Society Armagnac.
Oh wow!
Right, and it was a lovely Armagnac, and it wasn't even that old a cask. It was like 11 or 13-year-old Armagnac, and it was lovely stuff. And it was one of our AE casks for those playing at home, and we had it in cask, and he poured it. The staff poured it for Pip, and he picked up the glass and went, "Well, that's not a whiskey." and one of the staff, he sort of waved, and one of the staff brought over the bottle and handed him the bottle of Armagnac. And he sort of looked at it for a good 2 minutes in silence, just looked at it and said, "Oh, so Society's doing Armagnac now, are they?" He had no idea that we'd been doing Armagnac, and it was sort of like, this is almost like he's like, "It's a whiskey society, but you're doing an Armagnac." And the sort of table went quiet as he said that, and he said, "I would have done that."
Yeah.
He thoroughly approved. He said, "That's something I would have done. That's a really good idea." And I thought that was a really nice sort of moment where he's like, "No, that's a really good idea. That's you know what, I would have done that." He said, it was sort of like, yeah, that's awesome.
Exactly, yeah, and that's something that does come through again without being too belabored on the book, but. He didn't want it to be a stuffy club. It wasn't, a gentleman's club, and he even refers to that, I think, somewhere in there. But he wanted it to be a place of good times and conviviality, and basically people sitting down together and enjoying drams and talking about them. So it wasn't meant to be a stuffy leather armchairs and stiff upper lip sort of place. It's there is a slight irreverence to it, and he wants that. Wanted that in the genesis of the society, and still, it's carried through today. We still do things that no one else does.
Yeah, I mean, for those who have been watching the stream, I featured 140.1.
Yeah,
that's never been done before. We've never bottled that. I mean, it's sort of like we're first in for that. And it's like, I think that's really exciting. But that was what he was doing then. That's what we're doing now, and I think it's exciting.
I think it's great.
Can you show us Pip's other books? So Pip is not a first-time author, by the way. This is something worth mentioning. He's written a few books before, but before we jump into a few other things, I just want to say, Ezra Finn asks, "What's the nose like?" It's like a bonfire on a Caribbean beach. For me, that's almost what the name of that class could be. It's Deep, Dark and Brooding is an actual name, but it's like a campfire on a beach. it's all like there's a salinity note, but it's also a really like lint sea salt chocolate.
Yeah.
Lint sea salt dark chocolate. I love it.
Yeah. It's sea salt definitely in there, and there's a richness to it. Obviously, being a rum, it's got that sweetness in the backbone of a molasses or a sugar cane type to back to it. But the dark chocolate or I used to get from a cafe once they had salted caramel cookies and salted chocolate cookies, and it's got that biscuity or cookie flavour. And it's in the nose and it's also in the palate. So salted, like a salted chocolate cookie. Damn, I wish that place was still around.
Yeah, but it is a bit of a throwback, isn't it?
It is.
Like that's what a good spirit can do. It can sort of transport you to a time and place of that spirit. It's big.
Oh, it's big,
but
and it expands in the mouth, but a little tiny bit goes an awfully long way. But wow, that's enjoyable.
A few last questions before we show the books. One, sorry. Calte says that don't tell Pip that the Society Australia, Matt, would like to do a tequila. No comment. Petrino joined. Good to see you. Good to see you, Andrew. Ezra Finn, loves that description. Show us those books.
So I have two. This is The Founder's Tale is Pip's fourth book. I haven't actually got the first one he did, which was called Scots on Scotch. I do have it somewhere, but I don't seem to have it at the moment. He wrote another one, and he mentions this and talks about it in The Founder's Tale. He was interested in an analysis of whiskey, the flavours, and this occurred after he left the society, or pushed out. He wrote a book, can't see it on the cover, but it's called Appreciating Whiskey. I'll show the spine there if anyone can see it. It's I'm missing the dust jacket on it. This was one of the first books ever written that went through in a scientific way without being too heavy textbook-wise, but it delved into the concepts of the flavours and some of the chemistry behind those flavours. It is a bit nerdy, don't get me wrong. It's not for the new person to whiskey, but it's a fascinating idea of, he talks about the biology of the nose and where the sensory glands are and how we smell and taste and the interactions between those.
Murray said a little bit nerdy. What he meant was a lot nerdy.
Nerdy.
If you're reading a book about the biology of how your olfactory glands work when you're appreciating whiskey, then
nerdy.
You've gone full nerd, and that's okay. That's okay.
So that was the second book he wrote. The first one called Scots on Scotch I don't have, but it was written where he was interested also in the discussions of Scottish culture and how people felt and viewed whiskey itself in the place of Scottish culture and society. So that was an interesting book. It's around, but it's been out of print for quite some time. The third book he wrote was called The Scotch Whisky Directory. This is one that's lesser known, and it was a bit of a bold experiment in 2004, 2005, and he was trying to do essentially what a lot of the whiskey Bibles do now. Think Jim Murray's Whiskey Bible or the... I'm trying to think of other equivalent ones that are out there. There are other books where he's gone through the official bottlings and...
Oh, there's quite a few, yeah. Oh, I know the ones you mean, yeah.
He's summarised those, essentially, the A to Z of whiskey and Whiskey Classified and a few others that exist. And he's gone through and broken down the flavour components of various official bottlings as they were, again, at a time and place in history, 2005. So it's an interesting sort of picture, again, of what the whiskey industry was like back then.
You've got to understand as well, this is actually quite fascinating for a man that when he started this in the US was not a whiskey fan.
No.
He knew nothing about whiskey really. He in fact he even professes in the book that he wasn't much of a whiskey drinker. He didn't agree with him in his early years as a young teenager, and so it was sort of like he was like, oh well, I'll try something else. And and I think that's really cool that he sort of not only did he learn so much about it, but he changed the industry forever in many ways. Yeah.
So I thought that was a very interesting way of how he's done those things and the influence he's had.
Oh, Matt Teaching Beer Nerd says, I don't think I'd be half the whiskey drinker that I am without the SMWS. Does that make me a massive fanboy? It does. It does, but it also makes you a person who knows and knows how to appreciate good whiskey.
Yeah,
and knows what it's all about, really. Talton says, sorry, Matt, the Rugby World Cup has started in Japan and Russia. Mate, I can't seem to actually broadcast on any night where I'm not interrupting either a sporting event, The Bachelor, something going on. It's like I'm really getting on. It's like, you know what? If you need to go and watch the Rugby World Cup or whatever it is, you go do that. That's fine. Japan versus Russia sounds fun. That sounds like a good slaughterfest. That'd be good fun. That's the last sort of questions I think I'm going to take for now. I want to thank Murray so much for being here.
Thank you, Matt.
Talking about The Founder's Tale, which is in our October Outturn. It's available to all members. It's $35. It's a hardcover book. It's a lovely accompaniment to your bottle. The bottle you'll open on the Outturn as well. R13.1 is in Outturn, of course, as well. That's in October Outturn. There's not too many kicking around, I will be honest. But if you haven't picked up your gathering pack yet, now's a good time. I've done this every night, but there it is. 5 samples, tasting notes, flavor profiles, and a live tasting hosted in here like this right now with myself and our cellar master, Andrew Durbidge, who's going to be in here coming 28th.
Yeah.
That's Saturday week for those playing at home. So that's creeping up on me faster than I realised.
Oh, God.
That's 8 days away. So I'm looking forward to that. And I think that's all I've got. We've all got time for tonight. I really appreciate you tuning in, enjoying the stream. You can watch it again by clicking up there on the story icon. Later on, of course, it'll be available for 24 hours, but we'll also put this up on YouTube as well, which will be available later tonight. Thank you again. Whiskey Gacho says, bring back Muzz once a month. Muzz is always welcome in my whiskey office here, and he's always welcome to come have a chat, read a few books, sink a few drams, and taste a few things on the shelf. And I welcome guests onto the channel whenever possible. So thank you again for joining in. Muzz, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, mate.
And thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining in.
And we'll see you again tomorrow night. I might be a bit late tomorrow night, but we'll see if we can broadcast from the Brookladdy evening tomorrow night. It has booked out. Thank you so much, everyone who's coming along. And otherwise, I'll see you in Melbourne shortly. Canberra's still kicking on. Adelaide's kicking on. Adelaide's plenty of places left. If you're in Adelaide, or if you have any friends in Adelaide, tell them to come along. It'll be a blast. Cheers and bye for now.
Thank you, everyone.